I was folding my son Darius's laundry when I first heard it. A pale blue Oxford shirt, the one he wore on Sundays to church, pretending his life was in order. I always folded that one last, not because I saved the best for last, but because I didn't want to face the fact that he still let me wash it. That day I was folding it on the ironing board he never once thanked me for using. That day I heard it. "She's just excess baggage, Alicia. She's not our problem. We put her in a care home before the summer." I froze in place. The hiss of the iron behind me kept going, filling in the quiet with betrayal steam. Excess. Baggage. The words didn't even sound like Darius at first. They sounded like bad TV villains. But he said them clearly, like he'd rehearsed, like he meant it. I stood in the laundry room 3 feet away from the kitchen entrance, where they stood, where they joked, where I paid the rent and kept the utilities from going unpaid. I looked down at the shirt now trembling in my hands. I had hemmed the sleeve after a button got loose the day he spilled sauce on it. Not that he remembered. For a second, I thought maybe I misunderstood. But then came her voice. "Do it before the baby comes. We can't have her hovering around Alicia, my daughter-in-law, still calling my bedroom the back room, still acting like the house was their gift to tolerate me in." Thank you for being here today. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this, and I'd love to know what city you're joining me from, so share it in the comments. Now, sit back and let me take you into the story. I kept folding. Finished the shirt, stacked it neatly, set it beside the pile. Didn't say a word then, not because I didn't have any, but because when a lioness is deciding whether to strike or leave, her silence is just the breath before prophecy happens. After dinner, I went upstairs, not to sleep, to confirm, to find the paperwork. I pulled the drawer from the faux marble cabinet. Inside were years of receipts, old bank statements, yellowing but intact, property tax bills, the deed to this house, my house. Only one name was on it, mine. Back downstairs, they played music and laughed. If you didn't know better, you'd think this house belonged to them, because that's what they acted like. Darius had moved in 3 years ago, temporarily, he said, just until we close on Alicia's teaching job. They moved furniture into the front room, then they updated the appliances, on my dime. Then I found out they postponed the apartment. Then came the baby. Then I had been cornered quietly into a corner of a home that used to smell like peace. But I didn't cry. I didn't confront. That wasn't my style anymore. Now, I know what you're thinking. Confront him, knock the plate off the counter, scream, slam doors. No, darling, that's what they expect. They expect broken women to break loud. I knew better. Give me 48 hours and I could redo every string they thought I hadn't noticed them pulling. Because I didn't need volume. I had records, I had direction, and I still had the keys. Before bed, I took my pill, just 2 that night. No tears, just determination. I pulled out my old journal from my closet. On the first blank page, I wrote a name I hadn't written in 5 years. Ernest. Not my ex, not my friend, my late husband's best friend and our legal advisor, the man Darius never met. Because Darius was still a toddler when Ernest left town. But Ernest had returned 2 months ago when I saw him at First Emmanuel Church. Said he'd retired from county litigation and decided to help women who shouldn't be eating alone. I hadn't needed help then, but now I realized I didn't need a friend, I needed a witness. 2 days before my husband's funeral, my son Darius asked me if I wanted him to bring paper plates to the repast. That was all. No. Do you need help? No. How are you holding up? Just plates. I should have known then. But love makes you blind, and motherhood makes you keep cooking, even as they ungratefully chew. Darius has always been a boy made of metal and mirrors, looked solid from the outside, but needed reflection to see himself. He'd been sweet once, gentle with his words, easily amused. But when Howard passed, it was like someone stripped the color from my boy's world, left only gray ambition and the need to prove something. To who? Not to me, not really to himself, but maybe to Alicia. She entered his life with her neat hair and neatly folded dreams. Everything smelled like new money. But inside, cold, polite, deadly. Not loud, efficient. And efficient people can kill dignity like it's a spreadsheet formula. They moved in, just until the lease ends. Then, no lease. Then, we can decorate, yes? Then, this cabinet is broken anyway, let's toss it. Then, that locked cabinet somehow ended up in the garage. Only when Alicia called our old family photo wall too busy did I realize I had become a guest in a house I bought, with hospital shifts and tears. On Monday, I called Ernest. He answered on the second ring. Same low, raspy richness in his voice. Martha? My lord, I thought you still didn't need anything. I told him I did. I told him everything. Not loudly, just plainly, as if narrating the life of someone too proud to ask for help, but too smart not to recognize a lifeline. Darius is trying to put me in a nursing home, Ernest. One I'd have to cover myself because he says I'm his responsibility but not his priority. Ernest didn't interrupt, didn't say, "No way," didn't sigh dramatically. He just said, "Where can we meet?" We met at the diner off Mason Street, the one they never modernized, plates still chipped, coffee still hot, posters still promoting festivals from 2013. It felt like home, in a way mine didn't anymore. Ernest wore a brown corduroy jacket. He folded his hands neatly before lifting his coffee. "Do you have the house deed?" "Yes." "Is it co-signed?" "No." "Have they made any legal claims to your property?" "Not yet." "Good." He pulled out a pen and a yellow notepad, just like the old days. Ink ballpoint sounded like lightning to me, like things were finally moving. "We're going to update the will, lock your accounts, remove their access, set new power of attorney controls, file a property rights affidavit under your sole name with county notarization." I blinked. "All that before Friday?" He smiled. "Do you know how many women thought their son would show up for them, only to find out he showed up for the payout?" But before I left, he lowered his tone and asked, "And Martha, just one thing. Do you still carry that letter Howard left you?" My throat tightened. "You remember that?" "I remember you didn't cry at the funeral." I always wondered what in the world Howard could leave that would keep you whole after all that. I nodded slowly. "I still have it." That letter, tucked in my bedroom drawer for 16 years, wasn't long. Howard wrote with simplicity, not poetry, but inside it was one line that carried me. "If our boy ever forgets the bone we broke to build him, tell him this house will remember." That night, I opened my bedroom drawer for the last time. The letter was still thin, still soft around the edges, still weighted with something I never had to explain. I slid it into a red folder with all the documents Ernest had helped me pull together. The first brick was laid. Now, I just needed to burn the blueprint they were building from. Wednesday morning, Alicia came downstairs in silk pajamas loud enough to scream without speaking. She opened the fridge, let it linger a little long like she was expecting something to jump out. Then, in her usual chirp disguised as class voice, she muttered, "We're out of oat milk." Again, I was making grits. The butter was just melting into the center. I didn't look at her, didn't nod, didn't announce what flavor the jelly was. I just stirred. 4 minutes later, Darius came stomping in with his phone in hand, taller than he needed to be, mouth tight. "Mom," he said, "why'd you lock the joint account?" He said it like we shared more than blood, like he created it. "Because it's not joint, Darius. You're not on that account," I replied calmly. He blinked, confused. But it was confusion not from a lack of logic, confusion because he'd never had to hear me assert anything. Not since he was 17. "But I set the automatic transfer for the property taxes to work through that account. You said that was then. This is now, I said, wiping my hands, and taxes were paid already. Just not by you. Alicia entered, crossing her arms with all the false confidence of someone who knows she's losing leverage. Well, I hope you didn't cancel the card for the crib I ordered. I did, I replied. The kitchen fell silent. Except for the barely there sizzle of the skillet, it may as well have been her ego frying. They left in a whisper of tension. Alicia muttered something about retired folks and arthritis. Darius didn't even kiss me on the cheek. Not that I would have leaned in. That evening, I met Ernest again, this time in his office, a smarter location. He was already waiting, and this time he looked concerned. He slid a folder across the table. "The day before you locked the account," he said slowly, "there was a loan document filed in your name." I stopped breathing. "Against the house?" He nodded. "For $25,000. My hands trembled. Not rage, not panic, but the weight of confirming that this wasn't forgetfulness anymore. It was theft. "Is it legally binding?" I asked. Ernest shook his head. "Forgery never holds up, but the fact he tried..." I held up my hand. "Let's keep going, because I didn't come here to break down. I came here to rise up. Through every form they signed on my behalf, every click they made under my ID, every time Darius told me you wouldn't understand online stuff, so he offered to help with the bills. Now I understood just fine." Ernest looked me in the eye then, like he was about to say something heavier than disclosure. "Martha, Howard left something for you. I didn't tell you back then because grief had you wrapped up tight, and I didn't know if you'd want to deal with it at the time." "What was it?" Ernest opened the drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope, thick. Inside there was a document, simple, elegant print, a grantor's clause. Howard had legally restricted any co-owner claims on the house unless cleared by the original title holder, me. That meant Darius and Alicia could file, forge, dream, but they could never take ownership. And now I held legal proof, not just that it was mine, but that it was untouchable. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I slept on the couch, right there in the living room, on the sofa Alicia picked out herself and called hers every time her friends visited. I laid down with the grantor clause under my pillow and slept like I hadn't slept in 5 years. No neck aches, no nightmares. Because when a house finally becomes a haven again, even the silence hums healing. Friday was warm and sticky, the type of heat that makes you sweat beneath your kneecaps. But it wasn't the heat that made Alicia sweat that night. It was the man in the button-down short-sleeve shirt and leather wristband who showed up at her dinner party, holding a white envelope, a clipboard, and a small recording device. They were hosting guests, some folks from Darius's bank, a few local school board members. Everyone sitting on the porch with sangria and stories. It was supposed to be another branding event for Alicia's image. She was running a children's literacy grant campaign and wanted content for her socials. Pretty lights, pretty laughter, perfect backdrops. Until the courier, no company logo, no warmth in his smile, walked up the porch steps and asked, right in front of everyone, "Mrs. Alicia Simmons and Mr. Darius Simmons?" The group turned quiet. Alicia's laugh froze halfway out of her teeth. Darius tilted his glass down. "Yes?" Alicia answered, smile twitching. He handed her the envelope, then handed Darius a matching one. "You've been served. Court-validated eviction. Financial fraud filings are noted. You have 30 days to vacate." Oh, the silence. And then the whispers. Is that Martha's son? Financial fraud? Didn't she live here? What did she do to his poor mother? Darius stood up, almost dropped the wine glass, swore under his breath. "This gotta be a mistake," he mumbled. "This is my house." but the carpet beneath his shoes whispered otherwise. Because beneath the fake hardwood and the store-bought rugs he picked out was the foundation only my hands had poured into. Inside both envelopes was a court-filed eviction, a summons for Darius to appear over the fraudulent $25,000 loan application, a printed QR code linked to the YouTube testimony video I'd uploaded the night before, and a handwritten card that simply read, "Signed, sealed, remembered." They tried to power through the evening, pretend it didn't happen. Alicia made a toast about resilience, but the Instagram Live cut out. The guests stayed 15 minutes longer, then 30 minutes shorter than intended. By 11 p.m., it was just them on the porch, now haunted by everything they lost, but never earned. Meanwhile, at 9:23 p.m., Darius received something else. A voice memo, just 61 seconds long, from me. "Darius, you knew I was in the next room, folding your laundry, preparing the same dinner I used to make when you couldn't reach the stove. You knew, and still you said I was excess baggage, just dead weight." I paused on the recording, let quiet grief settle in the space, like dust in the corners of memories. I was your mother before I was your maid, and I was the owner of this house before you brought strangers in here and called my things too old, too inconvenient, too embarrassing. But more than anything else, Darius, I was your last act of protection, and you chose to weaponize me for convenience. So now, you're on your own, like you told Alicia. She's not our problem anymore. You're right, I'm not. The voice memo ended, but the weight of it, that stuck to him, like sweat, like disappointment, like the bitterness of disrespect now cooled and calcified. A week passed, then 2, and eventually, like all things not built strong enough to survive the truth, the noise about Darius and Alicia went quiet. People stopped talking about the day they got served. The dinner party footage was never posted. Their neighbors stopped waving. The invites dried up like old glue. People were polite, but careful. Shame like theirs doesn't stain in red. It settles in grays, quiet, dull, and permanent. Darius tried to call me twice. The first time, I didn't answer. The second time, I blocked the number. I'd said everything I needed to say with that 61-second voice memo. And once a woman has said her piece, it's not her job to translate it afterwards. Alicia sent a letter, handwritten, full of "God bless you" and "We never meant it like that" and mistakes of the heart. I read it. Then I folded the paper, slow and even, and slipped it under the leg of Evelyn's wobbly table. Because some things are better used for balance than kept as keepsakes. On the first day of fall, I returned to the house. Not to move back in, just to walk the rooms. They had officially surrendered possession of the property, and Mr. Hayes had the keys overnighted to me. I hadn't seen the inside in nearly 3 months, and when I walked through that front door, the silence swallowed me whole. But it wasn't scary silence, not this time. It was peaceful. It was mine. I stood in the room where I folded Darius's laundry. I ran my hand along the shelf where Alicia kept her cookbooks. I walked upstairs and opened the linen closet, the one she said was too cluttered with my old towels. Still smelled faintly of lavender. Still felt like me, underneath the paint she tried to lay over my memory. I stood by the front door before leaving, and I locked it. But that wasn't the last thing I locked that day, because the last lock I closed was the door in my heart that ever waited for Darius to come and love me like I loved him. I will always be his mother, but I am no longer his landing pad, or his storage unit, or his guilt sponge. I converted the house within 6 weeks, not into a rental, not into a museum of memory, but into something far more sacred, the Simmons House of Dignity. a residency program for older women displaced by family neglect. Each room named after flowers we were told we didn't deserve: lilac, rose, iris, magnolia. Our motto? We are not baggage. We are bloomers. Last month, we opened our doors to the first 3 residents. All of them had similar stories. One of them said, "You know, Ms. Simmons, I searched your son online. He hasn't posted since July." I smiled at that, because silence has power too when it comes from healing. These days my knees still ache in the morning, but not from climbing stairs that used to creak beneath me like guilt. Now, it's just age, and I honor it. I drink my tea when it's hot, not when everyone else is served first. I pray out loud. I write again. Last week I mailed something to Darius. A slim letter, nothing heavy, just a copy of a photo. It's him, maybe 3 years old, in a red sweater, sitting on my lap, laughing. His hand holding my thumb like I was the only thing in the world that kept him steady. On the back I wrote, "You haven't disappointed me. You've simply released me. I gave you all I had once, and all I ask now is that you forgive yourself. Mom." And you, what would you have done? Would you have screamed in his face, shattered a plate, burned the house down? Or would you have done what I did, walked away fully, and then built a home where you were finally welcome? Let me know in the comments, because some of us are no longer waiting at doors that were never meant to open inward. We're building our own from scratch. And our keys only turn once.